Hello, it's Graham Coath. It's another My Music, and today I will be speaking to a part of Brownbear, or actually Matthew. But first, we will be playing this little video for you all so you can enjoy the psychedelic flashing before your eyes, and then you can come back for a rest. Hello, Matthew. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you. Now, just in case people don't know how to pronounce the name of your band, you see, you've actually got it written here at the top on this album, haven't you?
Yeah.
And underneath, what does it say?
It says Brownbear.
It says Brownbear, but it actually says Brownbear.
Yeah,
isn't it?
Brownbear.
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 Just is that the Scottish way to say it?
It is officially the Ayrshire way to say it.
The Ayrshire way to say it.
That's what I'm going to go with. Yeah.
Yeah. What's it like for you, coming from that part of the world, in terms of getting into music? Was it?
Yeah.
Something quite different.
It was trial by fire, honestly. Like I would say, like if there's anything to do in Ayrshire, it's football, golf, and surprisingly, there was a lot of, like, when I was younger, a real influx of theatre. They tried to get theatre groups going.
Oh, really?
There wasn't really anything for music, and there wasn't any particular venues. So obviously, like anywhere, it has pubs that has music, but like in terms of actual venues, it would make you think there was a path to being your own artist. We didn't really have that. So
what was it? Working men's clubs, or
just like the typical pubs? Like not.
Yeah.
You didn't even really have the working men's clubs. I guess the last working men's club I can really remember was probably down in Ardross in Saltcoats. Like they had the Labour Social Club. So like I don't know. Like it was a really weird area to come from, and there wasn't much going on. So then the nearest place is doing something we thought were going to be like Glasgow, the city. We found out later there was a lot going on in Gourock and Greenock, and there was a lot going on in Ayr, which is, I was from a different, so Ayrshire split into 3 regions. I was from like the north, that's in the south. So yeah, it was really just a case of like, I'm going to have to pick up this guitar and go to the city and see if anyone will let me play a show and all the bands I'm in. And it's not like Brownbear was the first. There was a lot of really rubbish bands that came before that, as is everyone's life. And but through that, you start to meet more and more people, and with that, you know, gigs come up, and then later on in your life, you remember that person. So yeah, it was really, we were always outsiders, which I think later in our careers played into our hands, because for me, I was never in the city or part of a clique, or just from the start able to do certain things. I always had to figure it out, and maybe give me a little bit of a different perspective on how to approach it.
It's always interested me, some of the stories you hear from Scottish bands in terms of the way that they developed. I mean, you know, bands like Bell and Sebastian, you know, sort of all meeting in a church and, you know, developing this kind of weird little local scene amongst themselves. Did you have an element of that in the early days?
I think so. I think when I was in the band before Brownbear, like we were in Ayr, there was a venue called Sukasa, and the great thing about that, it was like above a coffee shop in the arcade. It's not actually an arcade, that's just what they called like the wee street. And they had this rule that you couldn't play covers, so no one was allowed to play a cover song in the venue, and it was amazing because everybody came in and played original material. So obviously the first time you go and do that and you suck, like you think, well, I'm going to have a better song next time, because you're seeing other people come out with these songs. Oh shit! Oh my god, that's a great! Oh my goodness, that guy's great.
That's really great, isn't it?
yeah, the power of putting songs first, like, it's really lost in this business. And they were like, nah, and it was amazing. There was just so many great writers, and it really pushed everyone. And so then by the time you got to Glasgow, you had this kind of Ayrshire crowd that was really behind you, and they knew your songs, and they had a
Wow.
passion for the songs. And then I guess the people in Glasgow thought, I should know this as well. And and that's the great thing about Scotland. Like, it's a small nation, so it's easier to have little subcultures and like really pick up a scene and then spread. And I think that's been vital to what's happened in Scotland, and I think it's happened in other. It's not exclusive to Ayrshire. You know, I think Ayrshire's actually fallen off the map a little bit again. I'd love to see that come back up, but areas like Lothian have done so well recently. And yeah, I think the other great thing about Scotland is it's like, you know, when you think about London bands, like for us outside, when we think of a London band, we kind of know what they're going to sound like. In Scotland, you couldn't say that, because like someone will be coming out of Scotland and they'll be like a jazz artist, and then there'll be someone coming out that's like an indie artist, and then a pop, and you're like, there's so much space, and no one's scared to do their own genre, and like there's loads of great wee scenes happening all over the cities. So I think we have a really unique situation in Scotland at the moment, where we've got like an abundance of talent. But
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we had the young artist Sylvie on a little while ago,
yeah,
and she's just done a documentary for the BBC about the scene in Lothian, etc. And we had B Charlotte on a little while later, and you know they'd worked together. It's just amazing, isn't it? What's coming
yeah.
out of Scotland at the moment?
And I think it's funny because like there used to be this attitude of there's one spot in London and then we've all got to compete for it. And I think people go, do you know what? We've got a lot to offer up here, and we're going to do that. And people are almost looking to us to go like, what's going on up here? And I think because we're all quite supportive and getting behind each other, it's made the real difference. And we're also, in a way, we're all able to connect, because it's not such a big country that we can't all relatively have an awareness of each other. We can't all know each other, but we have an awareness of what's going on. So yeah, I think things are only going to keep getting bigger up here, and I hope that we hold on to it. I hope that we hold on to it as our own thing, and it doesn't become a kind of cash grab and try and pull a lot of artists down. I think we have the ability now to take a wee moment and say, actually, we want to set up our own system here, and maybe try out different ways. And I would hope one of those ways would be putting artists' well-being first, because I think that's missing in music at the moment. Like, it's not very artist focused, and I think we're small enough a nation to put that at the centre and try something different, and then maybe show a different way to other parts of the industry.
Scottish independence.
I wouldn't care to comment, but yeah.
In the music scene,
yeah,
at least.
But in a really serious note, like I think like for a lot of our businesses to really succeed, we would need independence, because we don't have the ability to govern our own music industry. We don't have the ability to govern our own film industry. But both of those businesses are really lucrative for Scotland, especially film at the moment. It's one of the most filmed in places in the world is Scotland. And the only real way to have like autonomy in that is to have independence and be able to have not just an import to the market, but an export. So like there's a lot of argument just like out with like belief or like any sort of like passion for like whatever. There's just an economic argument for like the business that I work in, certainly, that real change comes for Scottish artists when we have independence, because we'd be able to have our own system and our own way to export music. So like,
yeah,
it's getting a bit technical, but
no. I mean, it's interesting you say that, because I follow on a different platform. I follow Major,
yeah,
and he's been quite vocal about Brexit and everything that it hasn't done for music artists. But I'm guessing that actually artists from Scotland actually felt even more aggrieved, if you like, with all of that happening.
Yeah, I think even taking music out of it, I think everyone in Scotland felt aggrieved because we didn't vote for that. And again, it comes down to like, we then have a system making decisions for us that we don't get a say in, and I don't know that that's a fair way to put on a nation that has quite different values from certain parts of the other home nations. And there was never any conversations about, well, what kind of situation we could have out of that, as our own nation. So certainly, like, as someone who I wouldn't have said like when the independence referendum came around, I was particularly passionate in any way. I probably swayed towards wanting independence, but I wouldn't say I was like, wow, I have to do it. And I have a lot of friends and a lot of love like for England. That I think like some of my favourite places, like Manchester is one of my favourite places to be, you know, and I think there's a lot of people in England who have very similar values to us. There's a lot of people who don't. And I think and that's why I feel for England at the moment, because you're sort of stuck in this situation where there's like a real divide between, like, I guess, left and right. Maybe that's the way to look at it. And but now as things have moved on, I just feel like a lot closer to wanting Scotland to be its own thing because of things like Brexit that we didn't ask for, and it's had a lot of damage to our economy and our infrastructure. And for music, that's just been dreadful. Like what it's taken away the ability to really tour in that European market, which is often actually the only way for bands to make money. Because
absolutely.
So it's been a catastrophe. You know, it's really been a dreadful thing for music.
Yeah, some of my favourite bands have had to pull out of various European concerts or gigs, and you know, it's just not acceptable.
Nah, exactly.
Stop it now. Now, listen, taking you back to that time then when you were ploughing your trade in that little club, I thought that's brilliant that they actually just said no covers. I mean, the trouble is these days everybody says, well, what covers do you know?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. It was such a relief as well, because the amount of times you play a show before that and someone shouts, play Wonderwall, and you're like, absolutely not. It's like the worst heckle in the world. So yeah, it was really incredible that they did that, and I think I don't know, more places should have that room.
But what were the things that you were listening to at that time that were inspiring you to try and write a song that would then make that audience really catch on to you?
Well, this became the difference, because throughout your life you're trying to write songs or you're listening to the music you're into, but when you get thrown in a situation like that, and it was beautiful, because the inspiration stopped necessarily being like songs we'd all heard before and started being a bit of like, I really love what this person's doing. Almost your inspiration was each other. So instead of your inspiration being like going for an old record collection of songs that we all know, it's like you're almost inspired by that other person. And there's a couple of writers at the time, like Paul McGranagan was one, and Michael Cassidy, and I remember seeing Michael Cassidy, and I would say 10 to 11 years ago, and Sam Fender was the support. And like, think about that now, you know, but like Michael was just exceptional. There was Julia Dugan, she was an amazing writer. There was just so many people at that level who were coming up with these songs that were like, wow. And then you would hear them do that one song and you go, that's the new standard. So it was in this amazing moment where like your inspiration was your peers rather than like some major label unachievable thing that you're never going to sound like because you don't have the budget. It was like, I just want to have a song as good as that other person. And then they would go, oh God, he's come along this week and he's really got that song. And then it became a bit of like, who's going to appear next week and have a song that trumps everyone. And
I'm still seeing that. I'm still seeing that a lot, actually, amongst sort of the younger generation of musicians.
Yeah,
there's definitely more of a sense when I interview younger musicians that, whereas sort of older musicians tended to talk about, you know, the classics, and you know, I was really into the Kinks, and then the Kinks, you know, brought me on to, you know, there's it's not saying that younger musicians aren't sort of paying any attention to history, if you like, but they're certainly more, you know, they will name check more, sort of like, oh, you know, this person that I've toured with, they're inspirational to me.
I think probably because like when we grew up, like we had all of our parents' music, and our parents had like their parents' music, and those songs came down, and then these new bands came along and they had great songs. And then somewhere closer to my age group, like we stopped having songs. I think that's I honestly think that's the answer, is that like we can't look to who was the equivalent of the Kinks to our parents because we don't have it. So then we were looking to like either really old music to find the comfort of an actual song, but that doesn't have the fear of having a middle eight, or you're looking to people around you who are kind of vibing it, and you're going, let's do it for ourselves. And I think I think the song's going to have a resurgence because I think this whole thing of like, I mean, I listen to music now and I'm like, oh, there's another writer. Oh, there's the next writer. Oh, there's the next writer. And I'm like, this isn't a song. This is a like a mishmash of nonsense. And the reason it doesn't last more than like a week is because it isn't designed to do that. Whereas songs before stood the test of time because they were songs. It didn't matter. People still cover them, see what was with them. I don't think a lot of the artists now who are in the top 10 will ever talk about it in about 20, 30, 40 years. I just don't think it'll happen. Unless we're talking about it for hilarious nostalgia purposes, which is not what you want to be as an artist. So I think the reason for that is probably because there's been a generation of no songs, or like they'll call them songs, but like if we're really honest about them, they're not songs.
It's a lot of yeah, and
yeah,
you like yeah,
it's just a lot of like
noise.
Nothing. Just it doesn't have value because, and I get it from like their side of the perspective as well, because like, why make something with value when music doesn't have value? Like you're only going to sell it for no pence and get a stream that costs you like, you get the 0.003 pence of a stream.
Do you think part of it is the mechanism as well? Do you think part of it is the fact that we now listen to music? Not all of us, but you know, I say that we do. All of us listen to music through streaming. I mean, some of us choose to put a record on,
yeah,
as well.
I think it's.
Do you think it's the fact that a lot of youngsters, 30 seconds, boom, and therefore people are writing for that 30 seconds or that 20 seconds. They're not necessarily writing for the,
a little bit, but hilariously, like that's almost made them want to start writing proper choruses again because they've only got 30 seconds. So it's almost back to that thing of like the first 30 seconds out them. But I think it's because, like, see, prior to lockdown, I think we'd all slipped into the habit of music being a background noise to the busyness of life.
Music.
Yeah, so it's like when you're commuting, when you're doing this, when you're working, it wasn't like engaged. It was the nature of streaming made it like that. Then we all got to lockdown, boom, and I think a lot of people started to listen, not just have it in their ears, but actually listen. And they went, "This isn't really that great," because what we saw in lockdown was that, like, a total boost in old songs and proper songs going through the roof in streaming numbers, and people weren't engaging in new music, which is why labels stopped releasing. Because like people were looking for a standard, because they wanted a comfort, they wanted a connection, and music probably wasn't that because it was just background noise. And I think a lot of people who maybe were like kind of artists that we were hearing a lot about, people probably stopped listening to them because they thought, actually, this isn't really doing anything for me. I need a connection. And I think lockdown changed that because we weren't on the move all the time, and now in that interim, TikTok's become a huge thing, and now a lot of people engage through TikTok, and it has its own. I mean, I'm not a TikTok fan, so like I'm one of those people who's going to say I don't think it works. But for the people it does work for, it has its own methods of what music means, and that's going to again make songs move a certain way to adjust to that market. But I think for me, songs that are songs, like the way I look at the songs, which is like they're written from like the heart, and it's very much like written by one or two people, maybe like one instrument, and then it's produced later. I feel like those ones are the ones that stand the test of time, and they continue to do so. And I hope that has a resurgence again, because that's what people really connect to. And I like to think that that's maybe why we've had such a great response to this record, and because it's connected with a lot of people.
And also because I feel that you deliberately want to hold people's attention throughout a whole song.
100%.
As well.
And the whole record.
Yeah,
it's not just the song, is it? It's like the whole record.
And I have to say, because you're into your filmmaking a little bit as well, aren't you? Right?
Yeah.
You do that with your films as well.
Yeah.
Because, again, I feel, in the age of we had the golden age of the sort of pop video, but we kind of lost that for a minute, and then we suddenly, in the same way that songs became sort of like a bit of nothing, videos kind of became a bit of nothing. You could almost take 20 seconds of a video and put it with another 20 seconds of the video, and like kids' books when you were young, when they used to write kids' books where it didn't matter which page you were on, you could just read, you could pick any old page and it'd be like, the dog is red,
Yeah.
the dogs in the house. You know, it doesn't matter. You could chop that up and move it about. It would still make as much sense,
Yeah.
right? But you're making videos where you want to watch the whole thing because it's telling you the whole story.
Yeah. It's a narrative, isn't it? It's like,
yeah,
but that's easier to do when a song has a narrative.
exactly.
And if you're struggling to do it, if you're struggling to do that, there's a chance your song doesn't have a narrative. And I think that's the biggest thing. And I think I was sick of like every music video being a band in a forest. Like, why are you there? And what? What? So in terms of narrative, what's
The only excuse being The Cure. The Cure could be in the forest because they wrote a song called that.
Well, that was it. But like, so you know that there'll be a band and there'll be a song called like Next Bus Home or something. And the song's about a breakup and all that, and they've had a breakup with a girl in the city, but the video's in the forest, and it's like, why are you there? Like, what in what world would that have happened? And I just switch off. Like, there's nothing that could make me want to watch that video. It doesn't matter how good the song is. I'm like, nah, I'm done. I'm out. And I think it just like stinks of a lack of creativity and a lack of originality. And a lack of like creative control, perhaps. Maybe like they're getting people coming and telling them it's a good idea and they don't get to say. But I think I'm not even really big on being in the videos playing. It takes a lot for me. I just think, what's the narrative of that? Like, I think videos are such an exceptional way to add a depth to what you've already said in your song. Add another layer to that story and another way to engage people. And the best videos stick in your head, right? And you go, like, if you hear the song, it makes you want to watch the video. If you see something like that video, go, oh, I need to go and listen to that song. And like, it's a dual connection in the same way that like your riff should be as strong as your verse, should be as strong as your melody, but the video should be as strong as that as well. And if you don't have one, don't make one. Like, I don't know, like, but maybe that's like an idealist.
Because if you were doing that as a commercial activity for a client, take it away from music for a minute, but if you were creating one of your videos for a client to tell their story, you wouldn't have them in a forest, would you?
No. They'd be like, why? What's that got to do with, like, I don't know, Bupa healthcare? And I'd be like, oh, I don't know, it just looks cool, doesn't it? Like, there's, but again, like, this comes back, it's like a cycle in it, because it's like a lot of music's made because it sounds cool. Oh, that sounds cool, that production sounds cool, so that video looks cool, but it's like, it doesn't mean anything. So like, once I'm past the flashiness of like, oh, sonically that was nice, oh, visually that was nice to look at, I'm never going to look at it or listen to it again. I'm not invested in it. I just went, oh, good for you, that was a great work, enjoy that. Whereas like, sometimes you see a video and it's like not really shot well, but there's like this narrative. I guess I learned that as well from seeing some musicians play, and I realized like some people can stand, like, Coldplay's what a show, right? But then there's some people who could stand on a stage that size by themselves and you would be like more enthralled with what they're doing. And I think, who do you want to be? Do you want to be the flashy show, or do you want to be that person who can just stand up and say what they've got to say and people listen at it? And I think that's where I'd rather be someone that people went, oh, right, they're saying something that they really mean and we're into it. And rather than like, I don't really know who I am, so I'm going to show you all these visuals and hope one of them makes sense. Like, it's just having a bit more like passion for what you're doing. But yeah, that's one way of thinking. That's the way I like to think about it. Like, that doesn't mean it's right or wrong or whatever. That's just like the way I approach things. And
do you think, however successful you become in your career, you'll just always go back to that room, trying to write that best song for that small audience at the top?
100%, because that's what the song is like. And the thing is, like, if there ever is a point where we've done so significantly well that maybe I don't have that normal life, maybe it's time I'm not really writing those songs, because am I really got anything to say? Like, do you know what I mean? It's like, the whole point in being a writer is to have something to say and to be able to articulate maybe what the average person can't. And sometimes the problem is that, like, even in film, even in TV, is like the writers that fill up that space are often maybe older, better off, well past any of the things that made me and them connect. And there's just such a disconnect because we're not here in real time what people are going through. And I think that's where like having funding and more grassroots support helps, because there's a lot of artists a lot younger than me who have a lot better things to say than I've got to say, but they just haven't had the platform for us to hear it, or we assume because they're younger or unsigned that like they're not as good, but when they're probably far more exceptional than I'll ever be. They just haven't been given that space. So yeah,
I love Andrew's comment. They're in a forest that look eco-friendly.
Yes.
Oh, it's trees, plants, the world.
I remember seeing a band come onto stage dressed up as trees and plants, and I just went, I won't be watching that. I won't name them either, but like I'm sure people could figure out who they were because it's
why?
Well, exactly. Just to be, I don't know. I think some people just think, well, if we do something really weird, people will notice. And I think, see, you've got a good song, people would notice that as well. That's the way I look at it.
I think it depends on what your intention is.
Yeah.
And I think if your intention is theatre,
yeah,
that's fine in a way. If your intention is to entertain through theatre, and in a way the music is just a sort of subsection of that, and it's not, you're not trying to emotionally engage people with the music, maybe that's fine. Maybe that's okay. I mean, it's, it could be comedy, couldn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I think they were really. It was funny. It's funny as well because I remember they started and they were doing the set, and I thought, I've watched a lot of things in my life, and I really thought, I can't sit for this. This isn't for me. And I got up and I walked out, and I went, I'll go to the bar, and I was just waiting. When I went out, there was like an usher at the door, and they said, if you leave now, you can't get back into the next act. And I went, totally fine by me. And they went, oh, well, I think you're missing out. And then the whole place emptied. I think there was probably about 10 people left in that room. Like, everybody had the same thing of like, I can't sit through this nonsense.
A bit Spinal Tap, really.
Yeah. If it was, see, maybe years down the line, I'll see the film that they made around that and realise I was part of the gag, and they got the joke.
And it was all a thing. Is there anybody there? Is there anybody out there that you feel has managed to successfully kind of navigate this into success, and you would go and see?
In what sense?
It has managed to make it successfully as a musician is beyond that.
Yeah.
Who would you say is, you would be inspired by, in terms of not just the music but the way that they've conducted themselves in?
I think one person that really springs to mind is like the way like Paolo Nutini's done it for all his success and the love that he's had. He kind of does it in his own terms, right? He takes his time with albums. He doesn't tour a lot. He came back and like he took forever, and probably a lot of people, I imagine, behind the scenes were worrying will this still be relevant. He took his time and did what he wanted to do in his own fashion, and he sold out 5 nights at the Hydro. Like, that's incredible, and that must be really difficult being on a bigger label, on a major label, standing in your corner and saying, "Nah, do you know what? This is what's right for me." So, I think there's a lot to be seen in what's happened there, because it's obviously a choice where he's thought, well, this isn't for me. I don't want to be out doing social media and doing all these things. I'm just going to do that. And in this day and age of TikTok and that, like, just seems impossible that someone could do that, but he has. So I think hats off to that team and to Paolo for standing his ground and at that level and doing that.
But the reason I think that he's managed to do it and do it so successfully is because he writes great songs and he's got a great voice.
Yeah, and he also got in that window before social media became everything.
Yeah,
I do think there's something in that. I'm trying to think of anyone who's come in post social media who's been able to do that, and I'm not sure. Hopefully, people do have references. It's hard on the spot, innit? I'll probably go off air and go, I should have said this person. But I think in my head, like, I remember seeing that and going, well done, like, well done for doing it your way. And every time he's done an album, it's been like that. Every time you hear people saying, oh, hurry up, when's this happening, when's that happening? He's always thinking, well, when it's right for me. I think a lot's to be said about that. Like, artist welfare is so important, and if that's what's right for him, no one should really say otherwise.
Do you think that artists will need to become almost a little bit more disruptive to the industry in order to
I think it's time to
maintain credibility, if you like, or maintain maintain their sanity as well.
Yeah, I think the biggest reason for disruption has to come for rights, because right now artists are getting such a poor cut of deals, such a poor cut from streaming, such a that terrible myth of live being where money is when it's not, and the artist welfare never really comes first. So I think more than anything, it's not even about like getting more people in or different styles of music, because even people who are pop artists, like, they deserve to have rights. Whether people think, oh well, they're pop artists and they're chasing fame, like, that's also okay. If that, I mean, someone has to fill that market. Like, that's not just because it's not for me doesn't mean that we don't need that part of the market. We do, but they should also have rights, and they should have protection, and they should have well-being. And I think the biggest reason we have to disrupt is because artist welfare is just not at all at the forefront or protected. And sadly, the majors are like doing. I mean, they're cutting deals with Spotify to get on the back end, and I think now's the time to stand up and say we've had enough, and it doesn't. This business isn't working. You know, even if you look at it like this, if you look at it like, if we were to say who are global superstars, maybe like Adele, Ed Sheeran, Taylor Swift, and Bieber or something like that. If you're creating like 4 or 5 or 6, even 10 artists in the last 10 to 15 years, like, as a global industry, the best you've got is 10 people. That's a failure. Like, how can we say that's a successful business when we can't generate superstars anymore? And I think when we start to be honest about where we're at in music, like, maybe there's a chance to move it forward and be like, because the thing is, for as critical as I am of the business, it's because I love it, and I love this business, and I love music, and I want it to be the best business world. I want it to be a leading business. I want everyone to be looking to music and going, how are they getting it so right? And the people that are leading it forward right now are getting it all wrong, and it's because money comes first. And they're like, well, we're making record profits from this part of the, but record profits from streaming, but streaming's only existed for a little bit of time. Like, that doesn't mean it's the most money you could generate, and you could generate it in a fair and ethical way. So I think, yeah, for me, a lot of people say, like, well, play the game, or this is how the business works. I'm like, it doesn't seem to me like the business is really working for a lot of people, but the few, and the very same, like, 5-10% of the business who make money from streaming and records are the ones that make it from touring. Like, but they're the ones that get all the investment, and they're taking cuts out of other people's money to put it back into the top artists to cut their losses. And it's like, it's so top heavy at the moment, and we don't need loads and loads and loads of millionaires. We need everyone in this business to be able to
live,
have a living, have food on their table and a roof over their head, and still be professional musicians. Right now, it's something like 87% or above of professional musicians in the UK aren't making the living wage. That's a failure of the business. No one at that top part should be touting out successful figures when most of those people in the business can't feed themselves. That's a failure of this business. And I think the minute we stand up to the majors and say, and all the other companies, and say, enough of the bullshit. We don't need to sell people the lie anymore. We need to tell them the truth. Where a lot of artists are independent businesses, and they need your support the same way you go to your local restaurant or pub or cafe or whatever that would be. And we don't need to be superstars. We don't need to be famous. We need to be community leaders, and we need to be telling stories for our community, and we need to be engaging with our communities, and we need to bring music back to the people. That's my thing.
Totally agree, Andrew. Quickest way for return streaming, the smallest amount of investment from the record companies. At the cost of, in fact, he mentions just before that David Byrne, and David Byrne talks about this in his book about music. And actually says, look, the cost of everything in music nowadays is minuscule compared with what it used to be. You don't need an expensive recording studio like you used to have to go to an expensive recording studio. You don't have to do that now. You don't have to, distribution is now in the hands of the artist. You can just put it up there. So the cost of getting music out there and letting people hear it is nothing compared with what it used to be. But in every other sense, it's gone completely the wrong way around. And actually, what you were talking about that's happened in the music industry is echoed throughout the rest of society, unfortunately, at the moment. There's so many people in society who, are propping up infrastructure wise, they're propping up the top
Yeah.
and not getting paid enough.
But music's a reflection of society, right? And
Yeah.
I think sometimes the business gets away because it seems like a liberal place, but it isn't, and there isn't people in positions where that can change fighting heavily for that. Or if they are, they're outnumbered, and that's what makes it difficult for them, and it gets exhausting and they get burnt out. But also it's worth noting that, like, although technically it's like the cheapest time to make music, that doesn't make it cheap or affordable, accessible for everyone. And although the cost might be cheaper to produce it, then the cost for it to reach the market become higher. So the reason you pay £100 for a ticket now is because you won't pay £10 for an album. So the costs weigh out in one way or another, and it means there's a massive music coming out without any like mitigation of standard. And it's got to be considered that why at the time where music is technically the cheapest possible thing, the cheapest time in history to be able to make music, that perhaps musicians are making less than they've ever made. And we've got to reckon with these anomalies because it doesn't add up. But someone's making that money.
I've told, do you know what? I've told musicians on here time and time again, it's all about T-shirts.
Yeah.
You know, I said, I've told so many musicians now, what you need to do is you need to do a T-shirt, and it should say on it, I listen to the name of the artist on Spotify, etc. But I bought a T-shirt to pay for it.
Yeah,
that's what should be on the T-shirt. We need to educate people that actually, unless you actually put some money in the hands of the artist, some way, shape, or form, you know, they can't continue to make it.
Because I think as well, like, how hard would it be for even someone like Spotify to have a thing where, Graham, say you've listened to the album 10 times, it comes up and says, you listened to this album 10 times, would you like to pay for that record to the album, to the artist? And we know you don't want the CD because you like to stream it. Would you like to pay the same amount as a donation to the artist because keep them going? A little prompt like that could make people go, oh, right, God, yeah, I've listened to that a lot. Maybe I should pay for the record. Like, there's little tiny fixes we could have, even in our current systems, that could encourage more engagement with artists and more financial input.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. What is encouraging you in terms of the music scene at the moment? The current album is being received really very well. It's a brilliant album. And the songwriting's exceptional. Do you feel yourself it's a massive move on from the last album in terms of your own confidence?
Yeah, 100%. I think it was a lot more honest and reflective, and inevitably as a writer you should get better. Like, it's all learning, and you learn from the mistakes of the first record and the things that come before and the singles that come before. But I think the real difference for me this time has just been there was so much love for that first record, and it felt really like people were playing it again and again and again. But when we got to this second record, it felt like instantly people were like that, and instantly people had their favorite song and their favorite lyric, and for all that I'm seeing people share the songs in the streaming sites, I probably see as many people sending me a picture of a CD or a vinyl saying, got this on again, got that on. There seems to be a real genuine connection to the music.
Yeah.
And I hope that's a reflection of their relationship to the songs and the lyrics and the meaning behind them. And it just feels a bit different this time, and it feels like there's a genuine, like, there's been this love and this, and I'm seeing people, like, I'll get to my Twitter and I'll go, oh my goodness, there's so many tweets, and I go to look, and it's because people are seeing someone tweet about me and then interacting with it, and they're having their own conversations about what the record means to them, and I'm just looking at it like, wow, like that was just something I wrote in my room when I was like heartbroken or whatever it is, and it's like that means something to people. So yeah, it definitely feels different this time, and I'm just trying to learn from the past. Like, when I was doing that first album, I was like, what's next, blah, blah, blah. This time I'm trying to take a moment and go, wow, this is cool and amazing, and I just want to appreciate that this has happened, and what an honor to release a piece of music and for it to have a connection with, like, a stranger, right?
I just really hope that people get a little bit, when I say bored of streaming, but I just hope that they do get a little bit bored of streaming. And I almost think that mankind could do that, you know, because I think we're getting a little bit bored of technology in lots of ways. I think, you know, I have conversations day in, day out on social media in different areas about technology, and you know, we've seen this week a reaction because that guy's unfortunate death about AI, and should we be pushing AI development on? You know, lots of people worried about their jobs in terms of Chat GPT, and you know, as a creative, will we need to be doing this or whatever? I just think that there may be a revolution out there somewhere that might happen.
I think it's already happening. I think there's nothing like holding the physical thing and reading it and seeing the lyrics, and like I found myself going to more like things like theatre and stuff like that, and just like wanting to be and see new things and new ideas and new ways of experiencing connection. And I think you'll see people going back to the cinema and they're going like, I go to the cinema all the time now, and I just, because you're like, oh, Netflix, nothing news on. And also what happens with the nature, like we're seeing Netflix go through what we're seeing in music. With the nature of that demand comes a decrease in the standard. Like I watch things now on Netflix and I sit and I always say to people when I'm watching it with them, I go, let's have a wee game and see at what point we can see that this has been commissioned on like draft 2 or 3. And you're like, oh, there you go, that's it, this is garbage. And you can tell that these things are rushed and not like they're not given the time that they need to be great, because they've got this demand, bam, 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 we need it out. And you can feel it in music, you can feel that it's about getting things out. What if we lose a momentum? What if we lose this and lose that? And the more you do, sadly, like you lose momentum anyway, because people think, oh, here's another tune. I actually missed a single. And sometimes I see bands release something and I go, oh God, I look back, oh my goodness, they released more things. And because I wasn't part of that release, I kind of care about it less. Like never underestimate that like people want to go on that journey with you, and they can't do it every day, all day. I don't want to know what you put in your fridge. I don't want to know where you're eating your dinner. I want to know what songs you're releasing, and I want to have time to digest that song and live with it and be part of that process. And social media's taken away that ability for us to have time, because we need to split our time between everything we're seeing. And I think people are sick of it. I think people want to switch. People don't want to be answering emails at 9, 10 at night, and that should be normal. Like everyone should have a boundary. This is my year of boundaries, so everyone should have their own boundaries and stick to them and be unapologetic in that.
There is a community spirit with music. Totally get that. I've seen it quite a lot lately online, on Twitter, for example. I've seen it quite a lot where, you know, people have been doing listening parties at venues, and they're packed now. Yeah, I think that's great. People going back to a record shop for a listening party. You know,
because what's better than being able to talk about something you love with someone else?
Exactly.
Like you want to go and be like, did you love this bit? And like, and then if you're just listening to it and streaming, and then you've got these weird things, you say to someone like, what are you into at the moment? And they'll be like, this artist, and then they'll be like, I've never heard that. And I listened to this, and I've never heard that, because we're all like, we love to be into the same things and be able to like chat about it. And I just genuinely think people are searching for connection, and I think that's going to bring us back to physical spaces and back to the arts. And the arts is the best way, I think, of like inspiring people out of the situation they're in, and fighting like the current situation we have, especially in terms of like the way we're being led. Like their plan would be to decimate arts, because they know that arts has people talking, and it opens up discussions, but in a safe and nuanced fashion that we might get somewhere with that discussion. It won't just be like, you think this and I think this and we can never get on. It's like, oh gosh, that's your way of thinking. I never thought of it like that. I think arts are really a really amazing space for people to look forward to the future and for progress. And we can't let them take that away. You know, we need to keep people in those spaces, and we need to keep art as a tool for fighting the systems that are holding us back.
I totally agree. Well, thank you so much, Matthew.
Oh, thanks for having me. Yeah. What a lovely chat. Thank you.
And chatting music. If you haven't caught or listened to the new Brownbear album, Demons, yet, I don't know what planet you're on, but please do take the time to investigate it check it out and have a listen and transport yourself back to a little room above a shop somewhere in Glasgow, and imagine that Matthew's singing these songs directly to you, and that will be a lovely thing for everybody.
It'd be beautiful.
Yeah. Until next time, this has been My Music with Matthew from Brownbear, and if you like this, do subscribe and share it with your friends. Not for me, but because the musicians really need your help. And have a great rest of the week, everybody. Until then, bye for now.